Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the show today, the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast. We are so glad that you've chosen to join us here. Today, I am going to have an angler on that when it's all said and done, he will go down as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, bass fishermen of all time. Edwin Evers is going to be on the program today. Let me tell you a little bit about this guy. He has won every major title in the sport. He is one of the only 5 people in bass fishing history to eclipse the $3 million mark in tournament winnings. And he is known as one of the most versatile anglers on the planet today. That's right. Edwin Evers from Oklahoma is going to be here today. You do not want to miss this podcast right here on the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast, where faith and fishing hook up. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast, where faith and fishing hook up. And today I have a guy who is unquestionably going to go down as one of the greatest bass fishermen to ever live. I mean, that's not an understatement. This guy has done it all in the sport. Edwin Evers, and I got to say the name right. Is it Talala, yeah. Oklahoma. Yeah. But you were born in Louisiana, Missouri. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, sir. That's about an hour north of St. Louis, right on the Mississippi River. Yep.
Wow. So that's interesting. You could tell people, I'm from Louisiana, I'm from Missouri, you did some moving
Texas,
around.
Lived in Texas a while. Yeah. My dad, he managed different packaging plants, and they'd send him into one that was not doing good. He'd get it turned around and get it going profitable. The first one, we lived there north of St. Louis, then we moved to Southwest Missouri, then he moved to Texas and turned another one around. Then he moved all the way to Illinois, outside of Chicago. You talk about a culture shock. I was a junior in high school, and I go from Texas, loved Texas. We actually, at the time, Dad got a V17 tractor and a 40 horse on it, and I was getting to fish a lot. We lived on a little lake, and he moved me to Illinois. And I will never forget, Chris, the second football game in September, it snowed. And it was horrible. I did not like it. Like going from Texas to Illinois, I didn't fit in, and it was right outside of Chicago. But looking back, I met some great people up there, great friends that I'm still friends with today. I worked for one of the largest Ranger boat dealers, after school and on the weekends, and really kind of was another stepping stone in my career that, you looking back, and I just, God always has his plan for everybody. I feel like and it was just a 2-year thing that made me stronger and put me in connection with a lot of great people in the industry. And then I moved to Oklahoma from Illinois. And I always think, looking back too, and I don't mean to, this is a long-winded answer, but looking back, it's probably one of the best things for a kid, just having to adjust and move and live in different states and make new friends. It probably made me a little more well-rounded.
2 things. Number one, we like long-winded answers because Jay Kumar tells me I talk too much. And so, but number 2, I wore this is an Illinois Fishers of Men shirt. And I wore this in honor of you today because I knew that you spent time in Illinois. And here's something that a lot of people may not know about you that I'm just enamored with. You played college football.
Yes, sir, I did. I got redshirted my first year. I got a partial ride. They paid for my room and board and tuition there at Southeastern Oklahoma. And I was a tailback in high school, but when you go to college, they recruit athletes at times, and not that I got recruited. I sent them tapes because I wanted to move back south. and convinced them that they needed to put me on their football team because they had a lake 12 miles from their campus was the reason I went there. And I played my second year. My true freshman year, I was a backup to an All-American strong safety. So I was basically on kickoff return, and a great practice dummy my freshman year. But it was kind of neat. We traveled, we did really good that year, and we traveled to the Aztec Bowl, NAIA, to Mexico City in Mexico.
Wow.
70,000 people in this stadium. AstroTurf, like, you know, back then there wasn't a lot of AstroTurf, and 70,000, and they never sat down in the whole football game. And I didn't know Mexico had like American football. I would have thought it all was soccer.
Yeah.
Hey, they kicked our teeth in. Like, they were so good, and they never sat down the fans. So it was a neat experience. And that year I won my first boat that summer in college, won a fully rigged skeeter. And man, I looked at it and I'm thinking, I probably can make it a lot further fishing than I'll ever make it in football. And I went in and I told the coaches, I was like, guys, I got to give up my scholarship. You know, I'm not coming back. And they understood. They hated it, but looking back, it was a good decision. So I only played 2 years, but it was a good 2 years. And I got a big old fat ring to prove it, you know, for being
awesome,
we were national champions, like, you know, in the NAIA that
you
year.
Don't talk about that a whole lot. And I love that. I mean, I always want to bring that up every time. I was like, did you know Edwin Evers played college football? Did you know? I mean, if I was going to build a defensive back, that's how Edwin Evers is what I would build, man.
I was fast. At one point in time, I was pretty fast. So,
do you think you're the fastest bass pro? Do you think you could, you know, we could put a bunch of guys out there and,
you know, I would think that, but as soon as you think that, there's somebody always out there faster.
Jordan Lee looks pretty fast. Jordan Lee looks.
I'll tell you who's fast is Jeff Reynolds.
Really?
That little dude, he is an athlete of athletes. Like, me and him went on a double date once, and this is back when I was in college, and we're walking out of the movie theater, and I said, hey man, let's race to the truck. And I just like kind of jogged out there. He blew my doors off. Like, he is super fast.
That is awesome.
And like, I ran like a really fast 40. Like, I was really fast, and it just like, I don't know. I thought Jeff wasn't an athlete. He's a really good athlete.
It's always shocking when somebody that you don't know, like my baseball team in high school, we stopped at Hardee's on the way back to get a burger. And this big old, you know, big dude comes out and he's got a big old gut on him and stuff. And he goes, who's the fastest guy on your team? And we're like, well, that's Trey, man. Trey runs like a 4.5 man. You know, he burned it up. He said, I tell you what, we'll get out here in the parking lot and I'll race Trey. And if Trey beats me, I'll give everybody on the team a free hamburger. And we were like, I mean, we were high-fiving. It's a lot. That dude smoked Trey. I mean, he smoked him
crazy
in his old Hardee's, you know, brown shirt and the brogans on. It was unbelievable. So you never know, you know, how fast somebody is. That's
what's the deal with you guys from South Carolina? Because I've been traveling with Andy. We don't pass up a Hardee's.
Hey, I'm loving a Hardee's, man. Hardee's.
We don't.
If I could get a Hardee's sponsorship, I would be like,
for breakfast, lunch, and then we'll go by there for dinner.
That's right.
And
that's
I'm
exactly
like,
right.
come on, Andy.
That's a South Carolina deal right there. When I was in seminary, the first place we'd stop on the way home with Hardee's. Got to go to Hardee's. Got to go to Hardee's.
Yeah.
So that was a great deal. Well, let me ask you. Tell us about you. I'm going to get into this pond thing stuff, but don't go yet. I'm going to ask you about the pond. But tell us about your journey. Tell us about how do you became a professional bass fisherman? How did it start? How did you get there?
I mean, this could be a long podcast if you truly want like the whole story.
I want the story. We want to know.
You know, I told you a little bit, my dad made packaging, and somebody came to my dad and they wanted to build, that used to be called a water wagon. And it was a boat made out of styrofoam, believe it or not. You put your feet in the water with swim fins on it, and you could propel backwards and just fish. And it weighed like 20 pounds. And it's just a platform of styrofoam. Well, this guy came to my dad and he wanted to make it out of polyethylene, which would be sun resistant, gas resistant. It's a stronger form of styrofoam. We're getting way in there. Long story short, my dad built it, you know, came out of this big mold. This thing would be about 5 feet long, 3.5 feet wide. and you could put a little 2 horsepower motor on the back. Well, Gary Powell was that gentleman's name that came to my dad from West Texas, Kittiquay, Texas. And I got to travel the country with him promoting this thing and fishing. Like, we'd go to different boat shows, and, you know, I'm in 5th, 6th, 7th grade at the time. And I got to do a lot of fishing with him. Like, he was a good worm fisherman, and we a lot of little ponds and lakes. And then I won my first tournament out of that boat, a Denton Center Bass Club tournament on Lake Worth, Texas, in 7th grade. And looking back, you know, Gary probably found these fish, and he let me go down through this slough first and caught like 11 pounds on a buzz bait. And me and Gary pull up, and we're in our little, you know, fishing pals is what they were called. And there's like 20 other bass boats there, you know, nitros and skeeters, all with 200s and 225s on them back in the day. And here's this kid with this stringer of 11 pounds, and I won, like, I don't know, won $700. And man, it lit a fire under me, like big time lit a fire under me. And begged and pleaded Dad for a boat. He finally got a V17, like I said, with a 40 horse, and he'd take me to the lake, and he wouldn't even ever fish. He'd just read the newspaper in the back, and I'd be flinging out there on Lake Bridgeport, not having a clue what I did or, you know, what to do. And just fast forward, I just fished some local tournaments there on Lake Bridgeport. Dad got transferred to Illinois. I got to work for Sam Rosevsky at Bedford Sales in Morris, and got to do some fishing with him. We traveled, fished the Canadian Bass Open. I just got to work for him and be in the industry. And I knew after I graduated high school, I wanted to be further south. It got really cold in Illinois. Wasn't a lot of lakes. And that's when I sent tapes. I sent tapes to like schools in Missouri, sent tapes to schools in Oklahoma, a few in Texas, and went and, you know, Dad, he'd take me and we'd visit 3 or 4 of them. And I ended up at Southeastern because Texoma was 12 miles from the campus. And Dad made a deal with me. Hey, you can take that aluminum boat to college, but you have to pay for storage, which was going to cost me $30 a month out at Newberry Creek. And you have to keep an AB average. And it's probably the best thing ever, because like that AB average, you know, it kept me in school. Like, but I'd fish so much, Chris, like every night. I fished a lot, like anytime I could, and there wasn't football. And, you know, football is kind of 7 days a week there for a while, but it really kept me on the straight and up and up. And so, you know, I just fished all through college. I won like 4 boats through the English Choice Pro-Ams, all on Texoma through college. I get towards the end of my college career, and I entered the invitationals in the fall of 97, November of 1997. I entered my first BASS invitational in Lake of the Ozarks. I fished those for 3 years, and then I made the Classic my 3rd year fishing the invitationals. And I just was single, you know. I look back at, you know, I didn't have 2 pennies to rub together. There for a while, I didn't have a house. I lived in a camper. Then when I did buy a house, I bought a $7,500 trailer house with no air conditioning, and I borrowed the money from my grandma, and I paid her $150 a month to pay that $7,500 off. And I just lived on nothing just to be able to fish. And man, here I am today. I'm sitting in a real house.
Unbelievable. What a story, man.
Yeah,
that's great.
I don't know if it's a real story or not, but that's how I got started, I guess. My dad didn't really fish. My mom took me the first few times, but they both supported me. And, you know, Gary Powell was probably a big part of it. You know, there's a lot of people that were part of it, you know, Sam Rosevsky obviously being a part of it, but I fished anywhere and everywhere I could.
Yeah. You know, I met you at Jay Ellis Fishing Camp. Okay. I don't know if you remember that or not, but you had 2 boats there. You had your nitro boat, but you had a bass tracker that was there, and that sucker had a motor on it that had to be like 5 times bigger than the rated motor. And you looked at me, we were going to go out, and then you said, hey, you think you can drive that? And I looked at your boat and I went, no, I can't do that. No, I'm not doing it, because it was wild. I mean, you had it was like a 150 on like a 17-foot tracker or something.
Here's what it was. It was a paralift. You know, Mercury used to make those paralifts, and it's a 12-inch scissor jack plate. So that jack plate would raise up 12 inches or it'd go down 12 inches. But when I put that scissor lift jack plate, they don't make them anymore probably because they're way squirrely. I had to like sign off that there was no longer a warranty with that tracker, but yeah, you could get that boat in some shallow water.
Dude, you said it can get a little squirrely. You said, you want to drive that one? I went, no, I'm not going to be responsible for that. I'm not doing that. So that was a great time. That really was. Well, listen, so I called you last week, and you're doing something that I'm just fascinated by. You're building a pond. I know you built a couple of ponds. So one of the best bass pros in the world, what do you want in a pond? I mean, if you're going to design a pond, I mean, I'm like, if I ever design one, I'm calling you, but what do you want in a pond? What's the pond deal? What are you putting in there? Cause I want to put it in. If I ever build a pond, I want to put it in there. So what are you doing?
Well, the long story is I bought a bulldozer a couple years ago, and I want to build about a 39-acre lake here behind the house. We bought a piece of property that we bought it off my wife's grandma who passed away and gave it to her aunt. And I got to looking at it, I was like, man, I could build my dream lake right here. And then I kind of like got the cart way in front of the horse. I didn't realize I had to get all these permits. And I've been 2.5 years dealing with the Corps of Engineers trying to get permits to build this lake. And there's no trout stream. It's just runoff. There's not even a stream. Like if you walked outside, like where's the water going to come from? It's going to only come from when it rains. Well, I don't know. I wanted to I can't build that big lake. I bought that bulldozer. I found a really good deal on this bulldozer, and I've always wanted to try to build a pond. Like prior to me getting married, I was saving my money to buy a bulldozer. I was 30 years old. I just really wanted a bulldozer to build a pond. And I had this pile of cash. Well, then I met the most beautiful woman in the world, my wife, and I spent that cash on a ring. So now 15 years later, I got to buy a bulldozer. And so long story short, I'm wanting to build a couple of ponds outside of this footprint of this 39-acre lake. So if I ever get to build this 39-acre lake, I'll have some other ponds around it to fish. And it's two reasons. One, I'm putting a handicap dock on a trophy bluegill lake, which I think is going to be super cool. According to Steve Barden, these bluegill will get to 2.5 or 3 pounds if I don't put any bass in there and I feed them. That's a big bluegill.
That is, yeah.
And then talking to Steve Barden and a few other people here in Oklahoma, I can buy these pond-raised smallmouth. And I just think that would be epic to have a pond with nothing but smallmouth in it, and they'll get to 4 pounds, possibly 5 pounds. Again, if I feed them and I have no largemouth in them. They say a smallmouth will do really good in a pond. Doesn't have to be spring fed, doesn't have to be anything if you don't have largemouth, because largemouth will outcompete them in a pond. And then the third reason I'm building them is, don't laugh at me, Chris, please. I've been studying this elderberries, and these elderberries are really good for us, super good for us. They have found that it helps prostate cancer and dementia and Alzheimer's and all these things. And they just passed this big grant in Missouri, $5 million to study these medicinal purposes and to also develop mechanical harvesting, because that's why more people don't grow elderberries, is because you have to hand pick them just like you would a grape. And so I did all this study and visited a lot of elderberry farms over the last few months. I planted 10 acres of elderberries. I am now the largest elderberry farmer in the state of Oklahoma.
Wow.
Which is really cool, but I need to be able to irrigate them. So that's the biggest reason I built the ponds. Is I'm going to have plenty of water to irrigate them, and I'm going to have some fish and recreation. I've got some friends and family members and church members that are wheelchair bound that I want to be able to fish that bluegill pond. I don't know. I think it's cool.
Man, that is cool. Now listen, so there's so many things to unpack right here. And so you're building elderberry, but you have changed my language. I mean, I would tell my testimony to you guys, and you guys would come in and listen to me, and I'd say, I got saved under a pecan tree. And every time I said pecan, I could see you just grimace just a little bit, So I started calling a pecan tree. So you also
Chris.
You got a pecan orchard as well.
Yes, sir.
And, and I've actually, I need to order some of those, because I'm telling you, you guys are the best looking people I've ever seen in my life. So whatever in those pecans or the magic deal. And this is what I've heard. I've heard that your wife, now you mentioned your wife and you said, you used all that money. I actually sold 2 bass boats to buy my wife's ring. And so I'd always hold that over her all the time.
Yeah.
But I heard that your wife is like the athlete in the family. That's what I've heard. I mean, that's the word.
There's no question. I did beat her last night in a beanbag game, like beat her twice. She did beat me in horse, but I wasn't near as serious in horse as I was in beanbags. I kind of felt like I better let her get back up. But no,
that came from Andy Montgomery. And Andy Montgomery said, I'll tell you right now, his wife is a good athlete right now.
She's in the National Softball Hall of Fame. She played collegiate softball. She was a 3-time All-State in 3 different sports. She had scholarship offers in soccer, basketball, and softball, all D1 offers. So yeah, for the little 5'4" that she is, she has a motor in her.
Wow, that is amazing. So you guys have got like an athletic family, and you're eating elderberries and pecans and the whole 9 yards.
There's a ping pong table right here, and I just quit playing her because I can't even, like, she's gotten so good at ping pong, I can't even get close. It's
wow,
frustrating.
Man, that's cool. That is so cool. Well, that's good that you admitted that on camera. That shows how much of a great man you really are.
Oh no, sometimes you just know if you're beat. I'm beat.
So you're going to have a smallmouth pond.
Yes, sir.
Giant bluegill in it.
The bluegill is going to be in the pond above.
The other pond.
I'm going to keep them separate. Just for the fact that I want to grow them as big as possible. Now I will have a smaller type bluegill, like a copper nose bluegill. I'll have shiners. I'll have shad in that smallmouth pond. I put tons of rock piles in it. I put a bunch of mossback fish habitat in the upper one. Wednesday, I'm going to put a bunch of mossback fish habitat in the smallmouth pond. We need some rain. It's like we're in pretty bad trouble out here for rain right now. But I don't know. I think they'll be neat. I've never built a pond, and I had help on the first one. The second one I did all myself, and I'm really proud of it, Chris. Like I think it turned out good.
I can really help you. If you need somebody to like walk beside you and talk, I can, I'm there for you, man. I can go there all day and do that. Well, I follow you on all your social media, and you are always putting up the coolest Bible verses that I've ever seen. And it's so encouraging to me. Let's talk about your faith a little bit. How did you come to faith? And, how did that happen?
It actually, I was in and out of church a lot growing up. In college, I really started going to church quite a bit. And then I'm just going to say, I really committed my life to God at a focus meeting in 2002 at Lake Seminole. Jay Ellis was speaking that night.
Yeah.
I was at a point where I had like $16 in my wallet, and I didn't have money to get home. Like, it was bad. And the focus meetings used to be after the first night of the tournament. And I was in 95th place, and it was a Megabucks event. And, I didn't pray to catch bass. I didn't pray to win money. I just that night, I just like, man, I was reading yesterday, and but the verse about worrying, do not worry. Yeah. I was worrying all the time, and we shouldn't have to worry in our lives as a Christian. And I just prayed. I was like, God, I'm tired of struggling. I'm tired of always worrying about money, tired of putting gas in my boat, tired of making my $150 a month payment. I'm tired of, I just want guidance on what you want me to do. And I'm committing my life to you right now, right here in this place, with Jay Ellis. Mark Davis was there, Bud Pruitt was there. And and the next day, it just like, he answered my prayer that he wanted me to take this path, because I had caught one little old bitty bass down by the dam at Lake Seminole. And for some reason, it was a burning thing in my head to go fish right there where this bass was this long. And it was on the stupidest looking bank. I mean, it was as flat as this wall, not a point, nothing. And it was weird, because I was just trolling motor between 2 spots really fast. And I caught that little fish kind of back behind the boat. And I went there and caught like the biggest stringer of the tournament the next day and caught them all day long, like power pole down in 5, 6, 7 feet of water and just never quit catching them. The amateur I had with me that day, his name was Matthew Wagnerfer. I'll never forget this. From Virginia, he caught a monster bag out of the back of my boat. And if it hadn't have been for him, I probably would have kept going, because when I trolling motored down the bank, I was kind of embarrassed just to even be up there, because Mark Davis was out offshore on a hunt and Tommy Martin was over here and Stacey King was over here. And here I am having to go past him up to the bank 200 yards and fish the stupidest looking spot ever. And I catch a 4-pounder really quick, and I'm just going to keep going, you know, and as I'm going away, Matthew throws out there and catches another one. And then we turn around and we just stay right there. We didn't have power poles. I said power poles. We just stay right there all day long and catch them nonstop the entire day. Long story short, God just completely answered my prayers. He's like, Edwin, I have you right where I want you. You just have all your priorities out of whack. The way I see what I was doing wrong. You know, I was focusing so much on having to catch a fish and not focusing on, you know, glorifying Jesus and living my life and putting my priorities the way they should have been. And I'm not saying that I still get worried about stuff. I still may be worried about a tournament over really, you know, spending more of my energy on reading the Bible or focusing on God. But ever since then, you know, I just think back to that, man. If I have my triangle and Jesus being right here at the top, my family and fishing's on down the list, everything's fine. You know, it's all going to work out. And God had me right where he wanted me. I ended up, you know, moving all the way up to 16th place in that tournament, won like $4,500. And I never missed a classic or a championship after that, with the exception of 1 year. And it's kind of, in my opinion, another really, really neat story. It was a year in 2009 where if it could have gone wrong, it went wrong. I had my time set wrong time zone in California. So I was an hour late, had a 22-pound bag, completely got like 6 pounds. Live wells mysteriously went off in another one, lost my entire catch. Like I had 4 or 5 things happen like that. And I missed the classic by 2 places, like just barely missed it. And the reason in my mind, no doubt, 100% in my mind, why all those things happened. A year prior, a kid by the name of Derek Keniston was fighting cancer. He had 1 week in his life that he was going to be able to go be in a boat, and that the chemo and everything. And that week was during the classic. It was a catch a dream trip that God had planned out. And I didn't know it. I didn't know anything about it at the time, but a month before all that, I get a thing from Catch a Dream. Hey, can you take this kid fishing? Between all his therapies, that's the week he can go. And I missed the classic that year, but I got to take Derek Keniston fishing on the trip of his lifetime.
Man, that's a great story. You know, that reminds me of my conversion experience. You know, when I was at a fraternity house and I lay under a tree, and that's exactly what happened. I was like, God, I'm sick of living like this. I'm sick of worrying. I'm sick of, you know, chasing this. And I said, I'm just going to give my life to you. And, you know, I stood up and I knew I was changed. But later there was this preacher preaching, and he was preaching about repentance. And I was like, that's what I did. That's what I turned to God. That's what I repented. I didn't, and that day I didn't say I repented. I didn't tell God I repented, but I did. I repented. I just turned to him and said, listen, I want you to have control of my life. I want you to be the one that guides my heart. And from that moment on, God has guided me throughout my whole life. And it doesn't mean that, you know, a lot of people think when we become a Christian, all right, everything's perfect and everything's great and we never have any worries or temptations, but that's not the case at all. We still have worries. We still have temptations. But God says, you know what, I'm going to walk with you through all of this. And if you'll let me, I'm going to guide your steps. One of my favorite verses is actually on my class ring in my high school is Psalms 119, 105. It says, your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. It doesn't say it's going to be a spotlight to your future and show you everything that you're going to do. But if you've ever been in a dark room, you know, you can kind of like put you have a little lamp and you put it down at your feet and you say, oh yeah, I can take that step. Oh yeah, I can take that step. And that's how God does it. And so that reminded me of my testimony. When I gave my life to Christ. That's awesome, man. I tell you, I enjoyed that. Well, let me ask you this. I'm going to move on here and get you going to, if you were going to give our listeners just a couple of things that you see, maybe young anglers or guys like me that don't know anything from anything, and just say, I just want to get better. I just want to get better. What would you give us? Any couple of things you'd give, an angler?
The thing that really still hits home to me, I mean, heck, to this day, is, a long time ago, I was at somewhere and I was really young, and Rick Clunn told me to really develop your own fishing skills. And what he meant by it that day was you had to develop confidence in what you do. And looking back on my career, the events that I've won or done really, really well in were always events that I didn't know anybody. I didn't have a friend at that lake, and I was able to call prior to the off limits and say, hey man, give me some waypoints, give me some guidance, give me some direction on what to go do at that lake. And every tournament that I had won was always a tournament that I just developed. Like I didn't maybe even pre-practice, or I didn't try to get outside help. I just went to that body of water and figured out those conditions that day. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, so many young anglers, they feel like it's like as many people as you can call and get as many waypoints as you can. You're not developing yourself and getting better. It may be a short-term fix. There may be instances where you get instant gratification, but the long-term of becoming better at decision-making, better at developing confidence in what you do, you're not developing that by getting outside help. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, just as a young angler, trust yourself enough to go spend 2-3 days of practice, that you'll find what you need in that 2 to 3 days of practice, and never get outside help, because you will be light years ahead of people that are getting outside help on those bodies of water, because you're developing your own confidence and making decisions. And you may find something, so many of those tournaments that I may have won, I was fishing a section of the water that after you get done with the tournament, man, we don't ever catch them in that creek. Well, I would have never have gone in that creek if I'd have called you, because, you're going to tell me not to go in that creek. I didn't know any better. And you just find untapped fish. I feel like when you have somebody that tells you, hey man, this waypoint's really good, well, those fish have been educated. And by me not having a waypoint, I'm finding fish that aren't educated. And those are the fish that you can generally win a tournament on, the ones that haven't been exploited in the past. So does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Man, that is awesome advice. I tell you, that is awesome. I've heard, one of the things about Rick Clunn, when I was at Southwestern Seminary, I was supposed to be reading Hebrew, and I'd be reading Bass Wars by Rick, and I'd be reading Rick Clunn stuff. There's so many, but I remember that's one of the things he tells everybody, is that he finds his own fish. And and finding your own fish. You're exactly right. We're living in a culture now where they get on the internet or they get on this, and there's nothing wrong with doing research, but finding your fish and developing your skills has got to be one of the greatest tips. Just don't, you don't have to just get a bunch of waypoints and just, go at it. It's not necessarily, who might help you, like you said, in the short term, but what is going to serve you. Man, that's a great tip. So, hey, listen, when I look up your name on the internet, okay, when I look up my name, a football player from Ohio State comes up. So I don't have any Wikipedia, stuff at all. But I look up your name. Do you know the first 4 questions that people ask about you on Wikipedia? Did you ever? Okay. No. Question number 1. You ready? What fishing line does Edwin Evers use? That's question number 1. Okay. The other question they have is, has Edwin Evers won the Bassmasters Classic? Ding, he has. Okay. How much money does he make? We don't have to know that. He makes more than Chris Wells. Let's just say that. How old is Edwin Evers? And that's the question. How old are you, man? Because you look like you're like 22
I am all the time. 47. I'm a grandpa of about 14 days. My daughter had a baby weighed 6'14". He now weighs 8'6" as of yesterday. I got a little grandson,
a 47-year-old granddad, and I'm sitting over here at 55, and I haven't, man, I don't even think my son's dating anybody right now. Good night. I'm way behind. Goodness.
My wife, I swear, she can't not smile. Like she is so excited right now. When she's sleeping, she's got this gigantic smile on her face.
That's awesome. That's just like you. I've never seen you not smiling. You know, I know, you know, when you get out there on the water, you know, things happen to all of us on the water where we just want to go and just blow up, but you always have a smile on your face, man. And I appreciate that.
I don't always have a smile, but
man, I tell you, that's awesome. Well, man, I appreciate you taking the time, you know, to spend with us on the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast. And anytime you want to come back, man, I tell you what, you're one of those guys I can ask a question and you actually answer the question. That's awesome. I love that, man. That's rare.
There might have been more than you asked. I'm sorry, Chris.
No, man, that was good. That was a great interview. I want to thank you for being here. Thanks for being my guest. You're welcome on the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast. What I want to do is get several of you guys on here at the same time and just get that dynamic going. And, you know, now, listen, this is the part I can't let you slide on though. Okay. You know, one of the most beloved segments is we're going to get you to imitate another Bass Pro. Okay. Now I almost let you go on that one, but imitate. And I want to tell you, Defo did you. And he did a pretty good, you know, he kind of got you when you're in your, you know, your deal. And so he got you good. Now we've had a lot of people, you know, a lot of people like to do Tommy Biffle. I know Tommy Biffle seems to be real. Cliff Crochet is a popular one. You know, Andy Montgomery, of course, is popular, but whoever you want to do.
Man, Chris, you're really putting me on the spot because I'm not one of those guys that can do that kind of stuff. You know, I don't even know who I try to imitate. I
don't make me pick somebody for you, man. You're going to have to, you know,
I have to do this. Like, I remember you said this now that you bring this up, you told me a long time ago, hey, you better be ready to do this. And I completely forgot that you said that to me. Dadgummit. I don't even know who I try to imitate. I just, come on, Chris.
Let's hear you do Andy Montgomery. Let's hear an Andy Montgomery. Come on. Andy's going into Hardee's to order a biscuit.
He is going to eat. Like, he is going to eat like all the time. He lays, like, he tries to corrupt me. He puts Starburst, like this mound of Starburst on the table.
Oh, I've heard this. Yeah, I've heard that he does this.
Of Reese's Pieces on the table. And he'll have like, and I'm really good, but if I don't catch them and I have to, like, you're just like, you want to eat them, you know? And
I told him he was the devil one time.
He's trying to make me, like, I try to stay healthy. And then, like, I've had a couple bad events here and he just mounds it up and he laughs about it. He's like, man, I see about 5 of them Reese's Pieces are gone, you know, or
it's like, I see about 5 of them Reese's Pieces over there, Edwin. Yeah. Like that. So, all right, I'm going to let you slide on the Andy. Since you told an Andy story and got him in trouble, I like that. So I
love Andy to death. He is a great individual.
He is a hoot. There's no doubt about it. Well, man, I appreciate you being on here. And ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, you can hit the red subscribe button, or anywhere that you listen to a podcast, you can just subscribe to the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast. Give us a rating and go on there and write something about the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast. We would love to have that deal. And let me tell you what's coming up. I'm going to end the podcast with this. We're about to begin our Nitro Bass Boat giveaway, and Edwin Evers always helps us with that and puts in a good word. And this will be the 5th boat I've given away, and I'm excited about that. And it's how we raise money really for everything that the Bass Chaplain and Well Spoken Ministry does. And we appreciate that. But Edwin, thank you for being here today. Appreciate you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast, where faith and fishing hook up. We'll see you next time.